WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, X, and our website, www.wvtcdetroit.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. Thank you for tuning to WVTC Radio Detroit and the Community Bell Show with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner Edna Bell. Stay tuned for insightful information Detroiters will find valuable. Text a friend and tell them to watch with you for news you can use. And now, your host, Edna Bell.
Hello. It is Monday, so it must be the Community Bell Show. Thank you for joining us. We are so happy to have you with us on this wonderful, sunny, warm Monday afternoon in the Detroit area. We're glad to have you with us. A couple of things I do want to say. Number one, our condolences go out to the family of Deborah Smith Pollard, who was the radio host on Gospel Radio 92.3. You heard her every Sunday morning, and we send blessings and our hearts go out to her family. She passed on yesterday, for those of you who have not heard. So we know she's with the Lord now. Secondly, congratulations to Wayne County Commissioner Alicia Bell for a wonderful prom dress giveaway this past weekend on Saturday. We had hundreds of young ladies who came in and got beautiful, beautiful prom dresses. Free shoes, jewelry, all of that. So we are just really, really pleased that the prom dress giveaway was again a success. Congratulations to all those young ladies who are graduating and who received those wonderful gifts. Their parents were extremely pleased. Of course, you know how expensive it is for young people at prom time. And thank you to Delronda Hood, who had donated four hairdos that her niece is providing for the young ladies. So we had a raffle and we're giving away 4 hairdos for those young ladies, and they were extremely happy. So everything went well this weekend. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you so much for doing that. Now, we have a special guest this afternoon. This young man I've known for a lot of years. Oh my goodness, over 30 years now. Has been in the community for a long time, doing all sorts of wonderful special things. Mr. Felix Sharpe. Felix, welcome to the Community Bell Show. We're glad to have you. Thank you so much for joining us, Felix. And can you hear us? Can you hear? Felix said he can't hear. Our technician is working on that. We're going to get you all set up. Talk to me. Can you hear me? You can't hear me? Say something so I'll see if I can hear you. I can't hear you either. And he's working on getting your hearing together.
Robert, you got me?
You gotcha. There you are. We got you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
You
can hear me?
I can hear you. Okay, let's try it one more time. We're doing this remote, everybody, so just bear with us. I can hear you, but go ahead and talk. You don't have to hear me. I can. You can go ahead and start talking if you can hear me, Felix. Felix, can you hear me? You still having trouble hearing me? Read my lips. Start talking. I don't mind. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Robert?
Felix? Go ahead and talk. Talk. You can start talking. Come on. Start talking. Talk. That's okay. Talk. Talk. You don't have to hear me. We're gonna go to a quick song, and then we're gonna come back and fix our technical difficulties. We'll be right back.
I'm black and I'm mad. I'm black and I matter. God created me to be who I am. Oh, I'm black and I matter. Yes, I'm black and I matter. God created me to be who I am. It doesn't matter how you view me. God created me for who I am. It doesn't matter what you say about me. I'm happy with who I am. It's not about color. It's not about race. It's God's amazing grace. Red, yellow, black, or white. We are precious in His sight. Oh, I'm black and I matter. I'm black. Yes, I matter. God created me to be who I am. Oh, yes, He did. Oh, I'm black and I matter. Look at me. I'm black and
back, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking with us on this wonderful sunny afternoon on the Community Bell Show, 4 o'clock, Detroit. Got to be the Community Bell Show on Monday. We're so glad to have you as always. Our guest again is Mr. Felix Sharpe. Felix is Cuban American, has been in the area for, well, I've known him for over 30 years. So he's been around for a long time, went to Western Michigan University, but he's going to tell you all about that. I'm not going to tell you the story. I'm going to have him tell you the story. Felix, are you there?
I am here, Edna. Good afternoon.
Good
Thank you for having me.
afternoon. I so appreciate you coming on the show today. I think it's so important, given the times we live in and what's going on in the world, that we hear a perspective from someone who is a Cuban American, who knows what's going on, and to give us a good feel for what we should understand and what we should know about the Cuban American relationship. So, but give us a little about you first before we talk about that. Tell us where you are from and where you went to school and the things you've been doing.
Well, Edna, just earlier last week, celebrated on Tuesday 60 years,
Oh,
having
you
arrived.
oh, stop.
Yes, having arrived from Havana, Cuba, with my mother and my brother Luis Sharpe, who passed away last year. May he rest in peace. And so we've been here. We've been here a long time. And the interesting fact there, Edna, 1966 is when we arrived. My father arrived in 1964. He worked at the United States Naval Base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, which is how we were able to come here. Because in the 1960s, there were no Afro-Cuban Americans arriving in the United States. In fact, I would suggest to you that the Sharpe and Martin family, we're a very large family in Detroit, Southwest Detroit, and now throughout the United States. We were some of the very first Afro-Cubans to arrive here because prior to 1959, the triumph of what the Cubans call the revolution, their civil rights movement, there was an apartheid system in place in Cuba. And so there were no Afro-Cubans traveling to the United States. We're here by the grace of the United States Navy.
Wow. And I think that's important for people to understand, because there are what people often hear of a Cuban population in Miami.
Yes.
Those are the folks who were part of the apartheid, who created some of the apartheid systems. But talk about that.
That is a fact. So the Cuban American right in Miami, Cuba, Hialeah primarily, they own Miami. Let's set the record straight, and they're very wealthy. They left Cuba in 1959 when Fidel Castro gave them and the United States Mafia 72 hours to get out of town. Get out of Dodge, as we used to say in the neighborhood. And so they landed 300,000 Cuban Americans, all white, in Miami in a 3-day period. The United States Mafia, of course, ended up in Las Vegas. So Vegas exists today because of the Cuban Civil War in 1959, because that is where the United States Mafia was operating. And so that is the population that we know as Cuban Americans here in the United States. Because unfortunately, they also control the media. When you watch Jose Diaz-Valar on what was MSNBC Now, when you watch Boris, I forget the young man's name, on CNN, when you watch Tom Llamas on MSNBC Nightly News, those are all Cuban Americans from the Cuban American right. And their view and their perspective is the perspective on Cuba and the United States relationship that we hear. You don't hear the rest of us, although that's changing now. And so there you have it. That there lies the difference between Cuban Americans in Miami and the rest of us. They were the ruling class that implemented an apartheid system of government. When I was born in Cuba, and in Cuba you start school at the age of 3 years old. When I was born in Cuba, I could not attend school. Although my neighbor, who lives three houses away, who is a white Cuban American, was able to start school because there was an apartheid system in place.
That
Cubans
sounds familiar, doesn't it?
uh,
Familiar, Little Rock and all those other places where little black kids couldn't go to school in certain places.
the connection between the American civil rights struggle and the Cuban struggle for civil rights and independence is very connected.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the very first political party started in the Americas by those of African descent was started in Cuba by Evaristo Estoñez. He was an engineer and a lawyer. Afro-Cubans were very well educated, and that was started in the 1910s. In the 1910s, there's a whole history behind that and how they assassinated that leadership and quelled that movement. But the very first political party started by Africans in the America was started in Cuba. So there's a huge connection between Cuba, Havana, the rest of the island, and the African American diaspora here in the United States.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a part of what I want people to get the connection to know, because it is not as widely known as it needs to be. And so we're going to keep pushing it till we know we can get as many people to know it as we possibly can.
Absolutely. And I would suggest to you as well, too, and all of my African American brothers and sisters, that you have family in Cuba. You just have never been told that you do.
All right.
Absolutely. And going back to the Miami Cuban versus, the rest of Cuba. And last weekend or 2 weekends ago, there was a celebration held in Hialeah by Miami Cubans calling for President Trump to send the Marines, essentially to continue to annihilate Cuba. It was interesting because you take a snapshot picture of that scene, and it was all white, compared to traveling to Cuba, or take a snapshot of any street in Cuba, and what you see is people of color, because Cuba has evolved. I was able to, before I left Cuba, months before I left Cuba, I was able to attend school because one day Fidel Castro in 1961 announced that henceforth we are all one now in Cuba. In other words, apartheid was over. And a week later, I was sitting in a one-room schoolhouse and able to go to school. And slowly but surely, Afro-Cubans have, not slowly but surely, but henceforth, Afro-Cubans gained their freedom and independence, because the system that was in place in Cuba before Fidel Castro was an apartheid system, which is why Nelson Mandela, and you can look this up, anyone who's listening to us this afternoon, Nelson Mandela, his very first travel outside of South Africa after he was released was to visit Fidel Castro in Cuba, because he stated, if Fidel Castro in Cuba had not sent 5,000 Cuban troops to defeat South African apartheid in Angola, then South African apartheid would have been victorious and he would never have been released. Cuba has a long history of supporting, working with African nations and countries. In fact, Cuba has established by Fidel Castro the Latin American School of Medicine, which is a medical training school where all the African countries send their young people to become doctors. And they also offer 12 scholarships annually for young people from the United States who come from disadvantaged communities.
And see, that's the kind of information that people need to have and need to know, particularly as we talk about the medical system in Cuba, that it is free. It is free.
Yes. Cuba does have a socialized medicine system, and so everyone in the country is eligible for medical treatment. And let's not forget as well, too, that medical school in Cuba is also free, Edna.
Wow.
But the medical system in Cuba is free to all citizens. Now, mind you, Cuba is this very moment, because of the tightening of the 60-year blockade by the first Trump administration, and then the retightening in the second administration, to the degree that we've now seen where Cuba cannot receive oil. They cannot run their electrical system, which means they cannot run their water system, and many other things. Go ahead, Edna.
I was just going to say, we talked about that last week with the Cuban ambassador when she came into town, and talked about the fact that the necessary items for hospitals to run, they can't get what they need to keep people alive because of the blockade. That's
People are
insane.
dying.
People are, and people, it is not being talked about enough.
It is not. People. Some people are afraid. People are afraid to to have a conversation about Cuba or one that may go against the administration. Note that at a time when Cuba is in the news every day, not a single news media was interested to attend the event that was held last week at the Sheffield Center, especially public radio, which has in the past done pieces on Cuba and
Mhm.
with and when diplomats have come to Cuba. People are afraid to have a conversation, but currently there are over 90,000 surgeries that have been delayed until future notice, and 11,000 of those surgeries are infants that require surgery. So right now, Edna, if you have cancer and you live in Cuba, and Cuba has excellent cancer treatment medications and programs. But if you live in Cuba and you have cancer and you were being treated uh, for that cancer, you are no longer receiving that treatment. How long will that person continue to last before they expire if that continues? If you require surgery in Cuba right now, and it has to be absolutely necessary in emergency surgery, you have to bring many of your own materials like catheters, the medications that will be used, etc., because the government cannot purchase those items. First of all, because now they are having a financial and currency shortage, but previously because United States policy, it is written into U.S. law that Cuba cannot purchase goods on the open market across the world. And the United States will punish banking institutions that process those purchases or countries that sell those items to Cuba.
That is just so heartbreaking. It's so inhumane um, to to treat just another human being in that fashion. And
And since 19, there was a letter written for the president's approval. That would be President, I think it was Kennedy at the time. I'm certain it was Kennedy. There was a memo written. It's called the Mallory Memo, that essentially sets the stage for America's engagement moving forward with Cuba, and the strategy speaks clearly. It is to create dissent, hunger, strife, and difficulty among the Cuban people. This was written in 1961, among the Cuban people, to cause for them to turn against their government. So it is the strategy, and it's not a new strategy. It's been the strategy all along.
and clearly the strategy is to starve people.
It's to starve people.
Starve
It's to
people.
create. It's to create hardship. Uh, and it is working. And the most affected are children and the elderly right now, especially the elderly whose children have immigrated, left Cuba, whether they're in Spain and Italy, in the United States and Mexico, otherwise, and they're no longer there to care for their elderly parents. Those parents are left to fend alone, and. And so if your water spigot isn't working because there's no power, you have to go somewhere and carry buckets of water to your home. What senior citizen, what 75, 85-year-old senior citizen can do 2 or 3 blocks of that on a regular and occurring basis? So the struggle in Cuba right now is very real. It is causing death and hunger.
And you would think, based on what you hear on news media, that none of that is going on because you don't hear about it.
What we do here is the message that that Cuba is a failed state. That has been repeated constantly by the Secretary of State and others in administration. Cuba is a failed state. Cuba is struggling right now significantly.
Absolutely. That heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
But Edna, 14 years ago, when Barack Obama, uh, a man who stepped into office, reviewed the file, uh, said this isn't right and took things in another direction.
Yes.
Cuba was thriving. Cuba had a lower infant mortality rate than the United States, a higher literacy rate than the United States. And Cuba has developed a biotechnology, uh, biopharma, yeah, companies that have developed significant medications to treat the world. You know, there's Haberpro, which is to treat diabetic amputations. I was just watching a program last night on Nova, a woman who requires diabetic amputation. There's a medication in Cuba that could prevent that. Cuba has a medication for lung cancer treatment. During the shutdown in the COVID period, Cuba had 5 vaccines. When France was when France had and Spain had people literally bodies laying in streets because they were dying from COVID. It was Cuban doctors who came in with their medications and stabilized matters. Evidence that Michigan is a state of 10 million people. Cuba is a country of 10 million people. We had, if I remember correctly, some 60,000 deaths as a result of COVID in Michigan.
Mhm.
Cuba only had 8,000 deaths. Same numbers because of their medical system and their approach, which was very stable until recently. And with regard to those 5 vaccines, I am actually vaccinated with one of them, Abdallah. I mean, and I've also received other treatments in Cuba. So they had a stable system, just like education systems, excellent,
Yeah.
but
Talk
they're
about
struggling today.
them.
They're
Because,
struggling today. So the education system, Cuba has a very high literacy rate.
Mhm.
One of the things that we should consider is that Cuban society is 500 plus years old.
Okay.
American society is only 250 years old.
Mhm.
Cuba was there 250 years before we gained our independence from the
Mhm.
British Empire. So it is a society that has been evolving for a very long time. Hence the high standards of education. Uh, it was the playground of the United States for 30 years.
Yes.
Which is why the Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors vehicles were there and are still there, and they're caring for them. But it is an education system uh, which started first of all in 1959 with the Cuban government implementing an illiteracy rate because there was a very high illiteracy rate in Cuba during the previous government of Fulgencio Batista, and when the United States was in control of the island. The education system was very poor. Evidence that I couldn't go to school then. Afro-Cubans could not attend school. So they had to step it up and come up with a literacy program to ensure that everyone could read and write. And they were able to accomplish that, Edna, in a 3-year period.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, many other countries have taken on and implemented Cuba's approach to literacy since then and continue to do so today. Children start school at a very early age, at 3 years old. At 3 years old, and not 5 years old, and the education system is not only intense, but it is also personal. It is also personal. It is nothing for you. It is not uncommon for you to see. It is nothing, as a Cuban saying. It is not uncommon for you to see a 16-year-old in middle school walking down the street with a teacher who was their elementary school teacher, because those are the types of bonds that children establish with their educators.
Is the
And
school system, the school year in Cuba the same as it is in the U.S., like September to June, or is it all year long?
it is a little longer. There is a break, but the break in Cuba is shorter.
Okay. Which makes sense.
Yes, the break in Cuba is shorter. There's more time in class and in school. And of course, Cuba has a widespread university system, beginning with the University of Havana, but they have several other universities throughout the country.
And it is one place where the medical school is world renowned, from what I understand.
That is correct. It's called the Latin American School of Medicine.
Mhm.
In Spanish, it's called ELAM, Escuela Escuela Latinoamericana de Medicina, ELAM,
Okay.
Latin American School of Medicine, and there are over 400 to 500 students there regularly from all over the world. And as I mentioned earlier, certainly from Africa, because all of the African countries send their students there to become doctors, but then from other parts of the world as well too, Canada, and of course from Michigan. There's a young man at Elam right now, who I met 2 years ago, who is from Dearborn, Michigan, Lebanese American, and since Elam was founded in 2002, there have been at least 15 to 20 young people from Michigan who have graduated from the Latin American School of Medicine. It's a 6-year program.
Mhm.
It is done. It is done in. It's in Spanish, so the students are required to the
No
students who
Spanish.
secure the scholarship.
Mhm.
They're required to learn Spanish in the 6 years that they're there. But the Cuba medical program is community based, Etna,
Okay.
and that's what makes the difference. So
Talk about that.
it's community based. So in the same way that we have recreation centers in Detroit throughout
Hmm.
the community, each community has its own recreation center. Each community in Cuba has its own medical clinic, and those doctors, for instance, during the shutdown in COVID, those doctors weren't door to door knocking, and they will go door to door just to check on the public health indices of the community, to understand who lives there, how old they are, what are some of the medical or physical health issues that the community that the inhabitants of that household are having, and it is a community based uh, medical treatment system, and that's what makes the approach in Cuba slightly different from the approach we take here.
Yes, yes, very much different, very much, but it works obviously.
I'll give you an example. Cuban doctors are so connected, and they're expected to be responsive to the community. So I have, and this is important as well too. In Havana alone, and let's not speak outside of Havana. I have 4 or 5 first cousins who are or were medical doctors.
Okay.
They all look like me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they all look like me, and when I visit, primarily my first cousin, Onassis Reyes Caballero, his phone is constantly ringing, and he answers and he takes it, and he's on his computer, talking to people, reviewing X-rays and examinations and whatnot, because Cuban doctors are always working,
Wow.
and they even work from home. That's just the culture and the process.
Wow. Talk about visiting Cuba. You can't leave the United States. Don't you have to go to Canada to get to Cuba? Or
No, 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 no. You can,
or
Edna, we can catch a flight, Delta or American tomorrow morning out of DTW and be in
okay.
Havana by 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, okay, because there was a time when we
Yes,
had to go to Canada, I thought, to get
that
to
is
Cuba.
that is a fact. There was a time when there were no direct flights to Cuba. They
Yeah.
were they were restricted by the United States government,
Mhm.
and eliminated years ago. Barack Obama reinstated flights to Cuba. Uh, Previously, in order to go visit my family, I would have to uh, from from uh, from October until December, I could take a flight from Windsor, uh,
Mhm.
Air Canada or Sunwing from Windsor, but then that flight would stop at the end of December, so I would have to drive to Toronto
Yeah.
years ago in order to fly out of Toronto to go visit my family in Cuba. But Barack Obama, when he normalized relations, he reestablished those direct flights. And interestingly, it's one of the now President Trump restricted. There were, if I remember correctly, 10 cities that American flight crews were flying to, in Cuba,
Uh-huh.
but President Trump, when he came in, restricted it to one, Havana. So if you have family on the eastern part of the island, like I do, I would have to fly into Havana, and then I would have to take transportation over the road to travel the 35, 40 hour period that it takes to drive all the way to the east to Guantanamo, which is where my father's family is from, and
Mhm.
Banis, where my father's family is from. So you can travel directly from the United States to Cuba. You require a visa. You require a visa, but American or Delta Airlines will sell you that visa. It's about $50.
So a passport won't do. You have to have a visa.
You have to have a passport to travel,
And a
but you
visa.
but you also require a $75 visa
Really?
to enter Cuba, which is required by the United States. That's not a Cuban requirement. That's required by the United States.
Wow.
And it's important to mention that Americans cannot travel to Cuba for vacation purposes. That is against the law. That is against United States law. You must travel there to engage the Cuban people. So your focus needs to be community, arts, music, education conference, that kind of thing. You cannot travel to Cuba and say, I'm going to go swim in one of those beautiful beaches in Varadero. That's left for the Canadians to do.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's the rest of the story.
The story is, and we're just going to have to continue to tell the story because people just don't know. That's why I wanted so badly for you to be here today, because people just don't know. And so you're going to have to come back and back and back to continue to tell the story, because it needs to be out there. People need to hear it from someone who knows,
Yeah.
someone who is a Cuban who knows.
And I'd like to touch on that point of you having family in Cuba but
Yeah.
not knowing it. Uh, Cuba was the northern border of the North American slave trade. It was the biggest island. It is the biggest island in the Caribbean. The southern border was Brazil. Those are the two islands that saw the most Africans traffic to their
I'm
countries.
glad you raised that, because I did want to talk about that. That we, most of us probably do have relatives and
You
don't know.
definitely have relatives, because when you're walking down the street in Cuba, you're shocked when you see somebody that looks just like somebody you know back home. You can separate a people, but you can't separate genes.
Yes.
You
Wow.
know, and so in that process, what would happen is those ships would come from Europe across the Atlantic. They would land in Cuba first. All of the Africans would disembark there. It was a long journey. Some would be left in Cuba. Some would be sent to Montego Bay, to Jamaica. Some would be sent here. Some would be sent there. And then what were considered the strongest of the Africans who were to be enslaved here were shipped to the United States from there. In that process, families were divided and
Mhm.
separated. And that's why, Edna, you have family in Cuba. You just haven't been told that you do. One of the first reactions that people have when they step off a plane in Cuba is they look, it's like, where did all these black people come from? Because that's not the picture that the United States paints
Exactly.
for us, rather, of
Not what
Cuba.
you see.
Hmm. Yes,
Wow.
yes.
That's pretty doggone incredible. But people need to know that and be
Hmm.
able to talk more about that and be in contact with those who are in Cuba. And can we send medical supplies? Can we send things to Cuba to help out?
Absolutely, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, there's an organization out of Ann Arbor called Michigan Action for Cuba
Hmm.
that just initiated a caravan to collect medications, food, that kind of thing, to drive to Miami and to ship to the Cuban people. We we started a project called El Pan, because in Cuba every community also has a bakery, and every morning you go get your fresh bread. You don't buy bread in Cuba for a week. You every day bread is fresh.
Hmm.
And shortly after they reopened, after everything opened, when we were in shutdown, I visited, and I was leaving on a Sunday. The plane was you know uh, taking wind, getting up in the air, and I'm looking down at the country, and there was no bread in Cuba that day. because there was no flour. Remember, during the shutdown, things weren't being shipped to countries and
Exactly.
whatnot. So we formed an organization called El Pan, the bread, and we collected food items and primarily and more importantly 15,000 pounds of Michigan made, it had to be Michigan made powdered milk, that we distributed throughout the pediatric hospitals, the hospitals
Oh,
that care
wow.
for children in
Mhm.
Cuba back then. And that was back during and after shutdown. The need in Cuba today is much more significant than it was back then. So food, medicine, clothing, those kinds of things. Uh, uh, solar powered lighting, that kind of thing, because there's an oil shortage. The power can be out for 15 hours.
Really?
Imagine if the power is out for 15 hours, your freezer and the food in your refrigerator. So the struggle is real. The
Yes.
struggle is real, and if we could somehow help, we're looking to do that sometime soon. Create another drive to ship primarily medication to Cuba, because that's where the greatest need is right now.
Wonderful. And the young man who I met last week at the ambassadors meeting, who talked about gathering items that they were going to travel and take
Mhm.
to Cuba, the young man from Ann Arbor
Yes.
talked about the organization he had started that will be doing that. So we've got a listening audience. If you are interested, if you'd like to, we'd love to have you donate um, whatever you can, so that we can ship it to the folks in Cuba. This oil embargo that the president has put on
Mhm.
does not allow for people in hospitals who need energy to keep the machinery going, that keeps them alive, that keeps them breathing. They're dying because they don't have the energy to do that.
Mhm.
Here we go to a hospital, we plug it in, and it works.
Right.
You plug it in over there, it doesn't work because the energy isn't there.
Mhm. There are hospitals that have actually are closed right
Mhm.
now, because they're in Cuba is in an energy saving mode right now. Uh, there is no fuel for automobiles in Cuba right now. If you have a car in Cuba, it is parked. People are driving electric scooters uh, and tricycles and that kind of thing. That's the going transportation in Cuba right now.
That's incredible.
Because you have no fuel. You have no fuel. So another struggle is real. The pain that it is causing is
Mhm.
is uh, unbelievable, and the stories are not being told. The only thing we hear is the news that the traditional media is reporting. And as I mentioned and demonstrated, that media is controlled by Cuban Americans from the right. Even Tony Doquil, who is the new ABC anchor,
Mhm.
he is not Cuban,
Huh.
but he is from Miami,
Ah.
which is why on his very first broadcast he deitized Secretary of State Marco Rubio as being I forget what he said, but he deitized him because he idolizes him.
Mm, isn't
And
that amazing?
uh, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, very accomplished elected official, you can't take that from him.
Mhm.
And he started, I believe, on the school board in Miami.
Yes.
And the experience that he has gained throughout his career is cannot be compared probably to any other politician who might consider running for president of the United States. But on the Cuba issue, he's never been to Cuba. He was born here.
Okay.
And his perspective is that of the Cuban American right, which lost the Civil War, as I stated,
Mhm.
and is seeking to now annihilate Cuba in order to meet their interests. When they left Cuba years ago, they stole the riches of the country. They stole the riches of the
Yeah.
country. Let's have a real
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
There are Miami Cubans who have perpetrated terror attacks on Cuba right from Miami. Posada Luis Carrilles ordered the planting of a bomb on a Cubana airline which was carrying a volleyball team from one of the Caribbean islands back to Cuba. and about 60 people lost their lives. He did that right from Miami. That's a terror act from within the United States. You saw recently a group of about 15 Cubans took a boat and a vessel to Cuba full of arms. This was like
Yes.
2 months ago, with the intent of committing terror acts. So
Yes. I saw that.
that's the reality of the conflict between the Cuban American right and the rest of Cubans. Who, by the way, if you're Cuban and you live in Miami, if you show any support at all, you travel to Cuba to visit family, you say anything positive about Cuba, you are
You're
ostracized, you
ostracized.
lose your job, and you're done. That's
That's the
what
way.
we call the Cuban mafia.
Wow. I tell you, Felix,
Yes.
this has been wonderful conversation. It's information that people just need to know that they don't know, they don't hear on regular radio. So that's why we have it here on
Thank you so much for
WBTC.
having me.
I'm so glad you were able to do that. And we're going to have you come back because I still want to know how things will happen when some of those items get to Cuba. And we want to try to find people who will donate to get some of those healthcare items to the Cuban people who are in sorely need of all of those items. Thank you so much, Felix. I appreciate your coming on and all of your frank conversation. Everybody, remember, Cuba's right across the water from us, and then all those folk look just like us. We've got family there, as Felix has said. We've all got family there.
Thank you, Edna.
Remember that. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Audience, we'll see you next Monday at 4:00 for the Community Bell Show. Have a blessed week.
Thank you for listening to Community Bell with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner Edna Bell. This broadcast was brought to you by WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. If you've enjoyed this broadcast, tell a friend to tune in. We'll see you next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern to the Community Bell Show, right here on WVTC Radio Detroit.
Hi, I'm Judge Craig Strong, and I love listening to WVTC Detroit.
Go to your Apple or Google Play Store and download the WVTC Gospel Radio app today. You can also say, Alexa, play WVTC Radio Skills.
Would you like to play WVTC Radio Network?
Absolutely. Download it today.
You're listening to WVTC Gospel Radio Detroit, and we're flowing in the Spirit.